Sonic Frontiers has by far been the most divisive Sonic game in the past decade. On one hand, it saved the franchise from dying, as if not for its success, Sega was going to, in fact, move Sonic away from the gaming market altogether, following bomb release after bomb release. But on the other hand, it's a very rushed together project with bad overall presentation and questionable design choices due to a confined developer size and lack of interest on Sega's end. Whether you like Sonic Frontiers or not though, it's without a doubt been the most influential and successful Sonic game since Sonic Mania, selling well into 4 million copies in its first year alone. At this point, it's most likely sitting at 6 to 8 million as we speak. Considering everything I've just said, Sonic Frontiers being the influential, successful game it is, deserves so much better on Nintendo. For years now, it has been readily available on the Nintendo Switch. Hell, most of the game's general quality on all platforms was botched and compromised just so it could be released on the Nintendo Switch without differing too much from the other versions. As a result, a lot of Sonic Frontiers' graphical and possibly even gameplay potential was held back so it could sell a couple million on Nintendo's PlayStation 3 Pro Power console. Though after the announcement of a Nintendo Switch 2 Enhanced Edition of Sonic X Shadow Generations, this made me realize how much more Sonic Frontiers could use this. Sonic X Shadow Generations on Switch 2 is confirmed so far to not only run at better picture quality on handheld and docked, but to also support 60 frames per second rather than its usual 30. As far as I know, those are the only real changes being implemented. Supposedly the new DLC stuff will come bundled in, but that's kind of irrelevant right now. With all that said, it's pretty clear Sega is really just doing this to cash in for a couple million more sales to make Sonic X Shadow a bestseller. But this really begs a question on why don't they do this with Frontiers as well? Not only is Frontiers just as good, if not more of a bestseller than Shadow Generations, but it's in far more desperate need of an upgrade. The gameplay footage I'm showing you right now is Sonic Frontiers running on my almost 8-year-old Nintendo Switch console. First thing I can say is that 1, this game is ugly as hell. 2, this game is really ugly as hell. 3, the pop-in is even worse than on the original Xbox One version of the game. 4, the game usually runs at 15 to 20 frames per second. And finally, 5, this game is ugly as... Okay, you get the point. With Switch 2 editions rolling out one after the other, Sonic Frontiers should absolutely be made a top priority, as it's one of the Switch's most iconic 3D platformers that runs and looks like genuine dog shit. I mean, I'll be fair, the game is somewhat playable if you close your eyes hard enough and pretend you're going to Whole Cake Island, but if we're gonna give Sonic X Shadow Generations a Switch 2 upgrade, a game that runs and looks perfectly fine on the Switch 1, albeit slightly reduced frame rate, then why can't we give it to the Sonic game practically begging for an optimal way to be played on Nintendo hardware? Now, if you really want to go the extra mile, you could bring the argument that Frontiers doesn't even need a Switch 2 specific remaster, but rather a whole new remaster to begin with on all platforms. This was actually a concept I was made aware of by SF Productions, and honestly, it's a really smart idea. Sega has always sucked up to Nintendo when it comes to releasing Sonic games, even if it causes them to lose a ton of money. Sonic Adventure 2 Battle releasing on the GameCube instead of the PS2, Sonic Lost World and Boom on the Wii U, and now even Sonic Frontiers on the Nintendo Switch 1. But with the Switch 2, Nintendo is no longer a power liability when it comes to developing Sonic games, so a Sonic Frontiers remaster that fully realizes a game's lost performance potential, which could also bank in a couple million sales on the way, is not a bad concept whatsoever. Though I will admit I do think it's a little too early for a full-fledged remaster. If Sega just waits 8 more years, I'm sure they could bank off extra on a 10-year anniversary remaster on all new platforms, since by that point, nostalgia would be a driving factor for sales. And it would have been long enough since Frontiers released for people to pay in full for it all over again. But then again, I strongly believe Sonic Frontiers is in desperate need of a Switch 2 upgrade at the very least. This game deserves to be enjoyed by the Nintendo Nintendo audience, and as it stands, the Switch 1 version of this game is just not gonna cut it. It's no way to experience this troubled yet fun and snappy open zone experience. I want to be able to play Sonic Frontiers at more than 10 frames per second on my Nintendo console, so make it happen while the iron's still hot. I mean, while you're at it, I don't think Colors Ultimate would mind having one of those too.